Picture this. It's 2020. You have two young daughters, a house, jobs, a whole life that from the outside looks perfectly fine. And then you sit down, look at each other, and make the decision to blow it all up. Not because something went wrong, not because you lost your jobs or had some crisis force your hand, but because you looked at the life you were building and decided, quietly, deliberately, that you didn't want it anymore. That's exactly what Brady and Heather Jobson did. And the move they made next is the kind of thing that splits families right down the middle. Half the people in your life will think you're brave. The other half will think you've completely lost it. The Jobsons heard both, and they went ahead anyway. Brady Jobson grew up moving. When he was 6 years old, his family relocated to another country, and that early experience of seeing a different world left a mark on him that never fully faded. Travel wasn't a hobby for Brady. It was something closer to a language he learned early and then, for years, forgot how to speak because life had other plans. His family moved back to Ohio, and over time, small-town routines swallowed up that version of him. He settled in, took the steady path, and the kid who'd once crossed borders before he could properly tie his shoes became a guy in the American Midwest, living a predictable life. Heather grew up in that same world. A small town in Ohio, big dreams she mostly kept to herself, and the quiet belief that those dreams would stay dreams forever. She'd wanted to see the world for as long as she could remember, but wanting something and actually doing it are two completely different things, and she'd learned not to count on the second one. Then she went on a first date with Brady, and the two of them started talking about travel. They talked for hours, not about where they'd been, but about where they wanted to go and what kind of life they actually wanted to build. Something shifted that night. When two people realize they want the same impossible thing, it stops feeling quite so impossible. They got married. They had their eldest daughter, Alexa. And for a while, the family did what families do. They took small trips, chipped away at the edges of the life they'd imagined, and kept telling themselves the bigger version of it was coming. Eventually, they couldn't keep lying to themselves. Travel wasn't a reward they were working toward. It was the point. And the longer they waited, the more they were losing. In 2020, Brady and Heather made the call that most people in their lives couldn't wrap their heads around. They sold the house, they sold the cars. The furniture went, their clothes, most of them. They even sold some of their daughter's toys. That's not a detail people tend to gloss over when they hear it. When the dust settled, they had roughly $40,000 and absolutely nothing tying them to the state of Ohio. Brady has talked openly about what that process actually looked like. He said they sold the house, sold the cars, sold the furniture and clothing, and donated what was left. Everything. Gone. And with that pool of money, they started traveling. Now, $40,000 sounds like a lot until you picture trying to sustain a family of 4 across multiple countries with no income, no home base, and no guarantee any of this would ever work. That's not a cushion, that's a countdown. And they knew it. Their youngest daughter, Chloe, had just come along by this point. So there they were, Brady and Heather Jobson, 2 kids under 10, 40 grand, and the rest of the world spread out in front of them. Every person who told them this was reckless wasn't entirely wrong, but every person who told them they'd regret not doing it was more right. What followed over the next couple of years was something most people don't do in a lifetime, let alone with 2 small children in tow. The Jobsons worked their way through more than 40 countries: Australia, Costa Rica, where they slept in tree houses, Indonesia, the Philippines, Greece, Turkey, not the tourist brochure version of it, but the rural parts, the kind of places most travelers skip. Thailand, Europe's edges. Alexa, the older daughter, was absorbing all of it. A kid who loves space and wants to be an astronaut one day, she wasn't sitting in a classroom memorizing state capitals. She was watching them navigate a new country every few months, learning to be comfortable with the unfamiliar. Chloe, younger and fascinated by animals and wildflowers, was getting the kind of childhood that's genuinely hard to put a price on, but it wasn't without friction. The travel family niche on YouTube has a thick streak of skepticism running through it, and the Jobsons were not immune. People online questioned the parenting. They questioned the stability. They questioned what it meant to raise children without a fixed address, without a school, without roots in the conventional sense. Those conversations got uncomfortable at times. Brady and Heather's response was essentially, look at the kids. Watch how they handle new situations. Watch how they interact with people from completely different backgrounds, and then tell us what exactly they're missing. Meanwhile, they'd launched their YouTube channel back in November 2018, well before the big move. Brady had a background in video production, which meant the content never looked like amateur hour. As the travel got more dramatic, the audience grew. The channel was pulling real viewers, real engagement, and eventually real income, YouTube ad revenue, brand partnerships, affiliate deals, and a Patreon community that genuinely wanted to be part of what the family was building. The $40,000 wasn't going to run out after all. But the real question wasn't whether they could survive financially. It was whether they could find somewhere they actually wanted to land. After nearly 2 years of moving, country to country, continent to continent, the Jobsons started thinking differently. The endless travel was extraordinary, but at some point you stop running toward the adventure and start asking where you actually belong. They explored options. They looked at different countries, different cultures, different possibilities. What they were looking for wasn't just somewhere beautiful. It was somewhere they could build something real and permanent, a place to stop moving and start putting down roots on their own terms. Northern Italy was the answer they didn't see coming. They parked themselves near Lake Como for a solid month, just exploring, feeling out what life there could look like. The culture, the pace, the people, the landscape with those mountains rising up behind everything, it hit differently than anywhere else they'd been. By the time they started seriously looking at property, the decision had already been made emotionally. They just needed the right place to show up. In October 2022, it did. The property they found in the foothills of the Italian Alps was not, to put it kindly, move-in ready. It was a 200-year-old stone barn, not a house. A barn, formally licensed as one, abandoned for what appeared to be a very long time. No electricity, no plumbing, no running water. The kind of place where most people stand in the doorway, take one look around, and politely back away. The Jobsons paid $120,000 for it, roughly $131,000. There was also a donkey named Stella living on the property. She came with the deal. They kept her around for the first few months before realizing that donkeys need animal companions to thrive, and since the family couldn't provide that long-term, Stella ended up with a neighbor. It's one of those details from the early days that sticks in people's minds, the first weeks in their new home, sharing the land with a rescue donkey in the Italian Alps. The renovation that came next was not the kind you hire out and wait on. Brady and Heather have been doing this themselves, hands in the dirt, daughters helping wherever it's safe enough for them to be involved. Alexa and Chloe have dug in the foundation, they've helped build the fence. Every project has been a family effort, which is either inspiring or exhausting depending on the day, and by Brady's own account, it's often both. There's a legal layer to this that makes it even more complicated. Because the property is classified as a barn, converting it into a livable home means meeting specific European Union regulations to have it reclassified. Brady described navigating that process as genuinely challenging, the kind of paperwork and permitting that would test anyone's patience. They've described the first couple of months as less about construction and more about getting their feet wet, adapting to the culture, and waiting on permits to move forward. The property also has a waterfall on it, which the family discovered and has plans to eventually turn into a swimming area. That's not the kind of thing that shows up in most renovation projects, and it became one of the more talked about moments on the channel when they shared it. The channel that started as a way for Brady to document his family's adventures now has over 370,000 subscribers and more than 55 million total views. Their estimated net worth as of 2025 sits around $317,000, built from multiple income streams: YouTube ad revenue, Patreon supporters, brand deals, affiliate income, and a travel hacking course they sell to people who want to learn how to fly for a fraction of the normal cost. They also bought land in Scotland, which added another layer to an already complicated property picture. That acquisition, roughly $40,000, was kept behind a Patreon paywall for a while, which tells you something about how deliberately they manage what they share publicly and when. But numbers aside, what the Jobsons actually built isn't a net worth figure or a subscriber count. It's a proof of concept, a real-life argument that the conventional story, house, jobs, suburb, routine, isn't the only version on offer. That doesn't mean the road was smooth. The renovating of a building with no electricity, no plumbing, and no running water is genuinely grueling. Living without a fixed structure, especially with children, brought real criticism, and not all of it was unfair. Questions about stability, education, and what the girls will remember when they're adults are legitimate ones, and the Jobsons have never really pretended otherwise. What they have said repeatedly is that travel makes you better, not easier, not more comfortable, better. That's showing their daughters how to be okay in the unfamiliar, how to connect with people who are different, how to build something with your hands from nothing. That's the education they're most interested in providing. Whether you think they made the right call depends on what you think a good life looks like. But it's hard to argue with the trajectory. From a suburban house in Ohio to a 200-year-old stone barn in the Italian Alps, with 40 grand, 2 kids, and a camera, they made it work. Most families, given the same starting point, would not have made it past year one. The Jobsons are still there, still filming, still building, still going.